4 brutal truths every Christian man learns too late in life. I work with people that are much like you. Whether you are an older person or a younger person, I've worked with someone just like you. And I can say this for the people that have become old. They learn these lessons. The people who are new, who are younger, they learn this stuff the hard way. So the first thing is that you have to understand being a Christian isn't easy. All right? I feel like there's a lot of lying about this subject when it comes to how the mainstream churches treat this issue. They're like, oh, just become a Christian. It's so amazing. There's so much smile. There's so much glee. And they don't tell you about the other side. Now, of course, just to stipulate, being a Christian is the best thing you can do. There's no question about that. That's not in question. What's in question is that the other side is not talked about. The other side is that, you got people that are going to mock you. You got people that are not going to be very nice to you. And beyond all that, you're going to be ostracized for your beliefs. And just look at how people just look at what happened to Charlie Kirk. If you want a microcosm of what I'm saying, that is the perfect example. Someone who is moderate, he's the average conservative guy from like the 1950s. He's not saying crazy things like some of these other people, quote unquote crazy. Whether or not it's actually crazy depends on the person you're talking about. I happen to be a little bit more on the crazy side on a few issues, but Charlie Kirk was moderate. Charlie Kirk was someone that was always said, come and debate me. A few people he didn't debate, but, he was a good man, so I'm not going to tarnish his name at all during the stream. But in any case, he got shot. Now, if there was ulterior motives and other parties involved in that, I don't know yet. But in any case, you understand that you are going to suffer character assassination. You probably won't actually get assassinated, hopefully, but you will have your character assassinated. You go out and say that you are pro-life. Assassinated. You say that homosexuality is wrong. Assassinated. Even saying these things on YouTube puts my channel at risk for demonetization, puts my channel at risk for getting striked. I've gotten striked a few times. I have a bunch of channels that are currently terminated. I appealed and got overturned, but haven't actually done the process yet. So, it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Okay, and a lot of Christian men cope by soy-facing. So, they go into like, oh, this is going to be so amazing, not going to be any problems. And then they start getting criticized for what the Bible says. And they're like, man, it's none of my business. Calling out evil is your business. It's part of being a Christian. If you have a vagina and you can't have, most of the women have more balls than the men at this point, so don't even take it that way. But take it this way, okay? If you have a vagina, being Christian isn't for you. And if you have a vagina, that means it's a weakness of the spirit. It's a weakness of the soul. Right? And you know what I mean by being pussy. Right? So, in any case. Second, Christianity is not about being nice. And that completely relates to the first thing I said. There's this weird association between Christians being nice. So, in my case, I happen to be a bit more of a rougher guy. In terms of how I talk and how I treat people. I've been called a prick on more than a few occasions. And could I be a little mean sometimes? Sure. There's probably a few people that are watching this that I work with personally that would be the first to call me a prick at times. And, maybe I do go too far sometimes. But, in any case, you have to think about Jesus, for example. Is it a very nice thing to do? Because what they say is like, oh, well, Jesus is, the nicest guy ever. Jesus was so nice, nice. And Jesus was a nice guy at times. See, the moral obligation for Christian men is not to be a nice guy. Right? The moral obligation for Christian men is to do the right thing. And sometimes doing the right thing doesn't seem very nice. Because what is nice? Right? Nice is relative to other people. Right? So, you are perceived as either nice or not nice. There's really no objective standard for what is nice and what is not nice. There is an objective standard for truth, though. So, will Jesus help people in need? Of course he will. He will do that. That was the whole point of him coming to earth. But will he also drive people out of the temple with a whip? Yes. Will he rebuke people? Yes. Will he call the leaders of the time children of Satan? Say you are of your father the devil? Yes. Are those things nice? No. But it's the right thing to do. It's true. So at times, you have to understand that goes to the first thing. It's not easy not to be nice. But that kind of goes into the point about what you're actually becoming when you become a Christian. When you become a Christian, you are submitting to the truth. Okay? Which is submitting to God, because God is truth. Right? You're submitting to the truth, and sometimes the truth has to be told, and people won't see it as nice. That doesn't mean go out and be a prick. But it does mean don't sacrifice the truth for the sake of being nice. Hey man, how you doing? Is homosexuality wrong? It was like a long time ago. Unbelievable. Balls cut off. Anyways, so, third, woman won't like you just because you're Christian. Now, this is something I've noticed a lot on my channel, so I've made a lot of videos about women. There'll be some videos on the stream about women. You guys seem to like the female content, so, keep making it, go in depth. But I have to talk about this other stuff as well, because I'm not just going to be like some dating YouTuber. But there's this weird thing I keep seeing in the comments where it's like, well, I go to church, and, I'm a good guy. Like, I go to church, and, the women don't like me. They're not attracted to me. Maybe it's because just becoming a Christian isn't some get cooch quick scheme. Like, get rich quick scheme, get cooch quick scheme. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean women aren't going to like you. Women, and I'll talk actually about this a lot in the future videos that are recorded within the stream, that, women, there are certain traits they find attractive. And those traits happen to mostly be in secular men right now. Although they shouldn't be, because these traits are found in the Bible for the biblical, traditional, masculine, gender role. But unfortunately, because Christian men are doing these other things, they take that into the female relationships and they start screaming sour grapes. There's nothing I see more in my comments that just make me go like, oh, like sour grapes. Because these are guys who, don't worry, everything I say will be free, but I will suggest very heavily that you join my Discord, because you can get one-on-one access with me. You can ask me a question on there. I will answer it in there as of now, at least. It's not too crazy yet. And you also gain access to uncensored information in Discord channel, which I cannot share on YouTube. There's also more general, broad information and niche information on different subjects that are not touched on in this video, most likely. Being said, find that in the description. Let's get back to the video. I'll tell you what. So there's one guy was like, and it's related, because a lot of people like him, but I'll use him as a microcosm. He was like, Christian men can't defeat lust because, you're missing the real issue. Because I said, Christian men can't defeat lust because, and it's hyperbolic because of the title, but it's because, lust is targeting a void in the soul, so it has to be healed, right? And he was like, oh, the real reason why is because, women just don't wear any clothes outside. And, how can you expect men not to be addicted to porn and lust and all these different type of things if women are doing that? We need to repeal the 19th Amendment to fix this. And he's like, wow, what's sour grapes? It's always sour grapes, because they wanted something, they go for it, and they get rejected, and then they're like, oh, well, they just are bad people. And, it's really sad, because, and by the way, I'm not against some of the solutions people pose, like the issues with feminism, the issues with, I'm patriarchal. Okay, so don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge the truth. Okay, just because you become Christian doesn't mean you're going to get a magic wand placed on you and you're going to get a wife. It's not how it works. Now, 4. Now, this is something that is talked about all the time, and it's just such a wild misconception. And that is, you still need to do things on earth. When people begin to become Christian, I call this spiritual disassociation. I put people through stages of psychological development, and I noticed during the second stage of purification, this happens a lot, because they're uniting more with that image of God. They're trying to get closer to God. And what happens is they end up disassociating from the world and from themselves, like their humanity, in favor of this being like this heavenly body or whatever. And the problem with that is, first of all, we aren't in heaven. Right, so how could you be in your heavenly body when you're not in heaven? We're humans. We're in his body. And second, Jesus didn't come to the earth to condemn it and just destroy it. He came to earth to redeem it, first and foremost. Right? Because that was the whole reason why Jesus came, in terms of chronology, was because of the fall. And the fall was how the earth began its decay. And, of course, that relates to humanity's decay. And Jesus came to redeem it, right? To give us a way to unite back with the Creator, to come back from our fallen state. And what happens is a lot of people just ignore that part and they go like, well, I just believe in God. Just God, this, anything in the world's bad. I can't do anything in the world. There's one person that commented that, I can't. One guy told me that I'm going to hell because I talk about working out. But it's because they have this radical view, and it's really problematic because you have things to do in this earthly life. Okay, you're going to live, unless you decide to, you're going to be alive for 60 to 80 years. Hopefully closer to 80, maybe a bit more, right? Don't live too long. I don't think living too long is that appealing, but in any case, what are you going to do that whole time? Nothing? You were on this earth for a reason. Alright, so don't fall for this, oh, it's worldly. Worldly, just take that as meaning sin. Don't identify and do sin. Great. When you start saying, oh, you need to deny everything on this earth. What, so I can't drink water? Because water's of the earth. Yeah, am I supposed to just, off myself because I'm of the earth? I mean, it's a dumb thing they say. And it's something that I find that Christian men learn way too late in life. They spend their whole entire life, some of them don't even learn it, Some just live their whole life living outside the world, and then their kids don't get raised right, and then they end up being a loser. I mean, it's just really bad. So, in any case, there's the 4 brutal truths Christian men learn too late in life. If you want more information, if you want to access me, any of those type of things, join the Discord.